All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So in the previous class, we had just had a brief discussion about what will be the course structure and what are the other important things related to the course grading pattern and say books and stuff. So if somebody has missed the previous class, they can go through the recorded lecture. In Teams, it is there. It will be there for some time. After that, it may get deleted. But before that, I will upload it in YouTube. But at this point, if somebody wants to go through the video lecture, they can go through the video lecture in Teams directly. Notes are also uploaded as appropriate and will be uploaded from time to time. Okay. So what we were doing after that is we have just I had just started briefly describing about what it means. Basically, what is the meaning of computational methods in thermal and fluid engineering, which we had discussed is a better name for computational fluid dynamics, as it is colloquially called, CFD. Okay. So where we try to solve any thermal and fluid flow problem by solving the governing equations of heat transfer, mass transfer, and momentum conservation in numerical form. So instead of directly trying to solve them analytically, means by integrating these equations have a lot of partial derivatives in them. Instead of directly trying to integrate them and solve them, because it is not possible for two complicated relations, we try to solve them using numerical methods. Different numerical methods are there. So all this together forms the subject, which is computational methods in fluid and thermal engineering, or CFD. Okay. So we have seen why this is necessary, like what is the requirement for CFD. We have seen that in many cases experiments are too costly or not feasible due to various reasons, like it can be too hazardous, or time scales or length scales are not appropriate for experimentation. For example, for the for studying the planetary boundary layer, if length scale is too large, or if we want to study the formation of stars, so the time scale is very long. So you cannot even collect data at those time scales. So you have to do either an analytical solution of the equations or numerical solution using CFD. So that is the reason why CFD has become very popular. And the other reason is that in most cases, analytical solution is not possible unless you take, say, like drastic approximations. But in that case, the main essence of the problem is lost. Means if I assume, for example, this bottle filling, if I cannot solve it and I assume that the bottle shape is a square or cube, then the entire problem is changed. So it cannot give us any useful solution. So that's why analytical solution is not possible in most real life problems, and we have to go for numerical solution. So what are the steps involved? Again, as I had previously mentioned in the previous class, for students who have done the CFD course with me, it is just going to be repetitive. So it is to just assume that this is like a revision for you. And we will be following a pace which is uniform for and necessary for students who have not done any CFD course. So the main steps are that, say we want to solve a problem, any problem. So I had started with this example in the previous class. So we want to find out how the temperature and flow pattern varies inside the bottle if it is filled with some gas. So some gas is coming through the nozzle, and there may be some gas already present at a different temperature. So with time, how the velocity varies and how the filling process occurs, what is the change in temperature, all this we want to predict. So this is not possible analytically because you cannot capture the variation in this complicated geometry. Complicated geometry here means that geometry is not a regular cube or a rectangle or a cylinder. It is deviating from this regular geometries, right? So we have what we do is we divide it into large number of very small parts. Okay, each of them is called a control volume or grid. We will study later, and then we try to simplify our problem based on what is necessary for us. For example, for this problem that I have described, we want to know the temperature and velocity profile. So we have to solve the for obtaining temperature, we have to solve the energy equation. For obtaining the velocity, we have to solve the mass and momentum, continuity and momentum equation. So how to simplify it in that case? So one option would be that instead of trying to solve the 3D problem, maybe we can make it a 2D. We can take a plane at the central plane, means a section at the central plane, like at the center of a bottle. If we slice it through that, we will get a 2D section. So we can try to solve for the 2D section, and it will also give us quite good insights. Okay, so the temperature and flow variation will be quite appropriate, although it will not capture the details and nuances of the 3D problem. Still, it is useful, and it is almost necessary in many cases because 3D problems are very time consuming to solve. Okay, we will see later that the time scales dramatically with when you increase the number of grid points. So that is one way to simplify. Maybe we can make it as solve, like make it we can solve it as an incompressible flow problem. Then we will simplify it further. So we can take appropriate assumptions based on our requirements and based on the physical problem. It has to be realistic assumptions. We cannot take arbitrary assumptions, right? And then develop the equations, governing equations for our problem. So in this case, it will be continuity, momentum, and energy conservation equation to solve for flow and temperature profile. And these conservation equations, which we will study later, these conservation equations are valid for the entire domain as well as for each of the small parts. Okay, so this conservation equation is valid for any. If you discretize this into very small portions also, these equations will be valid. Conservation is valid at all length scale. Okay, with some assumptions that the matter has to be continuous, like it should have continuum assumption. We should not go to the length scale of atoms where the individual atoms play a very important role. So those cannot be captured, but otherwise you can divide it into very small subdomains, and the conservation equations will still be valid there. And because we are dividing into very small subdomains, we can simplify the derivatives present in the equation in the form of differences. Okay, for example, dx dt can be written as x1 minus x2 by t1 minus t2, or x1 minus x2 by delta t. Similarly, any other derivative can be simplified and approximated using difference equations, which will lead to much simpler equations. Governing equations, all the partial differential equations will get converted to normal algebraic equations, which can be easily solved. So if we have large number of subdomains like this, we have a large number of simple algebraic equations which can be solved using many methods, which we will study later. So that is the main philosophy behind any CFD problem, that we are dividing the domain into small subdomains so that our equations, which are very complex differential equations, can be converted to simple form, but still remain accurate because the length scale is so small. And then we can just solve them because the equations have become much simpler. So there are various methods to simplify these equations from these differential equations to the normal algebraic equations. Each of them are known as a discretization method. Okay, and the two main methods that we are going to study is finite difference method and finite volume method in this course. So once you have solved the equation, you get the data. For example, we will find the temperature, then velocity vector u, velocity vector v, velocity vector w in x, y, and z direction, pressure, so things like that. So from that, we have to calculate relevant parameters. For example, if I want to find out what is the heat flux, I can calculate using heat flux is equal to minus k dt dx at a point. So because we know what is t at two adjacent points, we can find out dt in terms of delta t. Similarly, dx in terms of delta x, means difference in temperature and difference in length. or defines space between two grid points, and then we can calculate what is the heat flux. Similarly, we can find out shear stress or any other parameter that we want to calculate, which is possible based on the variables which are already solved. So this is the crux behind solving a CFD problem. Any questions from the last class or this class from the new students who are not familiar with CFD? Two students from mathematics department are there, PhD students. So I am not sure what is your background. Do you know Navier-Stokes equation, other equations, fluid flow? Have you done any fluid flow courses previously? Fluid mechanics?
No, sir.
No idea about nothing means. What about heat transfer? Nothing directly.
Yes, sir.
So then, like, why are you interested in this course? Because it will be relevant for your PhD problem, PhD topic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, there is nothing to worry. Like whatever is relevant for our course, all the equations also we will study briefly, and you can apply those basic principles. But it is better to have, like, whenever I am saying that Navier-Stokes equation, momentum equations, so then you may miss some of the things. So if you can go through some basics, at least very basics, one chapter in some fluid mechanics or heat transfer book or some internet sources also, it will be helpful to you to at least get the basic terminology. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So otherwise, for the course itself, it should not be any much problem. You will get to understand during the in the due due process of the course. Anyway, I guess for all mechanical students, first year, MTech students also, there should not be any problem because you have done all the courses. Right? So it should not be any issue. Are there MTech students who have not done or who have done CFD courses previously? No response? Don't hesitate to respond to any question. Okay. So,
No, sir.
Okay. And the other point that I mentioned is that you need at least some exposure to some programming background, okay? Or you can learn on the go. If you do not have any programming background, I suggest that you learn MATLAB, which you can learn in 1 or 2 days, maximum 1 week, because we will need to learn at a very basic level. You can just, it's very easy to learn. MATLAB is very user friendly. So you have multiple courses online, NPTEL courses are there. One good course is there by IIT Madras faculty. You can find other courses also, some foreign university courses, or just like using help also you can learn. MATLAB is so easy and so user friendly. If you know other languages, that is fine, like C or Fortran, Python. Okay, so some language is necessary, programming language, because ultimately we have to solve the problems using programming. These problems cannot be solved using pen and paper. Okay. So anyway, let us now continue from previous class. So once you have the results, we cannot stop at that point and say that, okay, our results are final, problem is solved. Okay, so everything is done. No, we have to now check whether the results are correct or not. We have to check a lot of things. Okay, we have to examine the model as well as the results. So we have to, while solving also, we have to understand whether we have taken the physical models correctly or not. Means I cannot take arbitrarily anything, any boundary condition. Right? So we have to see whether the flow is turbulent or laminar. Okay, so depending on the velocities. So initially you may not even know whether it's laminar or not. So after solving, you say you find that the flow velocity is very large. Okay, it becomes, it should be a turbulent problem, but I have solved this as laminar problem. Then you have to go back and again incorporate the correct physics. Okay. Then there are other effects which may or may not become important. Whether you have taken the boundary conditions correctly or not. What are boundary conditions? For those who do not know, boundary conditions are the conditions which are given at the boundary of the domain. Domain is the volume for which you are solving the problem. So at the boundary of the domain, we need to give appropriate values of temperature, velocity, whatever equations we are solving corresponding to that, we have to give some condition. Otherwise, we cannot solve the problem. Okay. So for example, for temperature, I can specify that all the walls are at room temperature, or maybe I can specify that instead of temperature, this is the heat that is being passed from the walls to the inside. So heat flux condition can be given. Again, we can study later, but these boundary conditions has to be correct. And for example, for flow, we can give that some flow is coming from the inlet with a certain velocity, 0.1 centimeter per second. Everywhere else, at the boundary, the flow velocity is 0 because it is like a solid wall. So there cannot be any flow velocity at the solid wall. So like this, we have to check whether the boundary conditions have been given correctly or not. Then once we get the results, we have to check whether the results are physically correct or not. Means, so we have solved the problem for filling, and we find that after solving, the results show that the velocities at the top is going outside, means towards outside. Anything can happen because you are numerically solving a problem. It is not guaranteed that your solution is going to be correct. So if I find that the velocity is outside, it means that flow is going outside, but it cannot happen because we know that we are solving a problem with boundary conditions so that the flow should be inside. Okay. Or we find that, say, the temperature, say initially temperature was something 300 Kelvin and we are filling it with 400 Kelvin. But the entire temperature has gone down to 200 Kelvin, which could not have happened because we are mixing something at 300 Kelvin with a 400 Kelvin fluid. The temperature cannot go below 300 Kelvin because unless there is a lot of heat removal, say it is adiabatic condition, there is no heat removal. So we know that something has gone wrong. So we have to check whether our results are physically correct or not, whether they are reasonable considering the boundary conditions. Okay. So this is not the only check. What also we have to do is that we also need to see whether the results change with change of numerical parameters or not. Say for example, again this domain I had divided into 1000 points. Now if I divide it into 2000 points, how much the results are changing? Ideally the results should not change much. If the results are changing, then it means that our results can change with the number of grid points. It means that you cannot say which result is correct. So if I go to 4000 points, then the result may be even more different. So this is something which we'll study later. This is known as grid independence. So we have to study with different types of divisions to see whether the results we get similar type of results or not. If we get similar results, we can say, okay, our results are correct in that sense. Similarly, with different steps in the time direction, which are known as time steps. Okay. Then, so this is known as whether the solution is grid independent or not. Okay. Then can the boundary resolution be improved? We also can check whether at the boundaries, whether we are capturing the physics correctly or not, whether the heat flux that we have given is because of very less number of points. Is it not like it may not be captured correctly? To capture the heat flux correctly, our points should be very near to each other because we are approximating dt dx in terms of the distances. So if the dx is too large, our approximation will be not good. So these are these type of things we need to understand. So anyway, this will become clear later on during the course. Just to give you a feel of what is involved in CFD, I am going through this at this point of time, but everything will again be touched upon later on. Okay. So this is about how or what is involved in a CFD problem. Let us finish this part with by looking at a few applications where CFD has become very important nowadays. Okay, you are free to ask questions anytime. Okay, don't hesitate at all. Any question, you should not also think whether the question is silly question or anything like. You never know. Like any question can benefit other students also. Okay, or you should not hesitate that I do not know this or other students like those type of things should not be there. So because everybody has a different background, different. They have studied different subjects, so it is understood that many students may not be clear about many things in the course from the beginning. Okay. So anyway, so nowadays CFD has become very important. Why it has become very important? Previously, the computer resources were not sufficient to solve a full-scale CFD problem. Even if you go back, say 20 years, it was very difficult to solve a large-scale CFD problem like flow over a aircraft wing. So what was done was that people used to design wind tunnels. If you know about wind tunnels, they are like long tunnels through which the wind, so air is passed by using a blower at a uniform velocity. And small scale prototypes are put. So instead of a large aircraft, we can design the same aircraft with the same features. Everything geometry will be similar, but it will be scaled down by 10 times the size or 5 times the size. Okay. And we can put the model inside, and then we can flow the air, and we could then measure the different parameters like velocity and pressure to get an idea about what is the flow pattern. But with this increase in power or of computation or increase in computational resources, nowadays it has become much easier to do the same calculations directly for the scale of the aircraft using CFD. Okay, so that's why in recent years it has become last 5-10 years, lot of work goes on in the industry and in academia and other research areas, research institutes, using CFD for various applications. Okay, so some of the major application is, as I've noted here, one is aerospace. So we want to see what is the lift that is generated for the aircraft, how to reduce the drag. So how to increase the fuel efficiency basically by reducing the drag, what type of wing structure will be suitable, all these studies. So if you want to design a new aircraft, you may have 10 ideas about wing structure. So what will be the angle, what will be the length of the wing, at what angle should it be kept. So all this can be studied using CFD. Okay. Then not only the flow outside the aircraft, flow inside the gas turbines, flow in the combustion chamber, how much, like how smooth is the combustion, how much efficient is the combustion process, how better is the mixing. All these things also can be calculated using CFD, and the gas turbine efficiency can be increased. Then within the aircraft itself, the air conditioning in the aircraft for passenger comfort, how to improve that. All these things are studied in the industry. You will see that if you join any industry, say aerospace industries in India, there are groups like Rolls-Royce. Then Boeing also has a unit here. GE also does a lot of work here. So a lot of aerospace companies are there. You will see that a lot of teams are there. One team is working on the, say, wing design. One team is working on the fuselage design. Fuselage is the main part, body part. One team is working on the combustion inside the combustion chamber. One team is working on the cooling of the turbine blade. Another team is working on the air conditioning inside the aircraft. So all these teams are using CFD tools for doing their studies. And once they converge on a good solution, then only they will try to build a prototype and study that to save cost. So similar another area, analogous area is automobile design, particularly if you go for higher end automobiles, aerodynamics plays a very important part. In this case, it is the opposite of aircraft. In aircraft, you want to generate as much upward force as possible. Upward force is known as lift for the students who are not familiar. So you want to generate as much lift as possible so that the aircraft can fly very easily. For the cars, you want to generate as much downward force as possible, which is known as what is it called? It slipped my mind. Basically, it's the downforce. Okay, as much downforce as you can generate, so that the car has more grip on the road, so that it can turn at higher speeds. Then also you want to reduce the drag, the force or the resistance the car has to overcome. And if you reduce the drag, then the efficiency will increase. You will need less fuel. So this is one area where a lot of work goes on. Then another is undercarriage. Again, undercarriage aerodynamics is something like related to this only, where again the purpose is that you generate as much downward force as possible, okay, so that the car sticks to the ground. Particularly for racing cars, those of you who are interested, you may note that there's something called a ground effect. So if the clearance of the car is very less, if you will see this in even high-end cars, like if you see a Ferrari or a Bugatti Veyron, you will see that the bottom part, okay, the bottom plate is very near to the ground. So the clearance is very less, so that the air flows very fast through the bottom part, and it creates a relatively low pressure region, and the car sticks downward. Okay, so this type of analysis is also done using CFD. Interior ventilation already I've explained. Even in cars also it is important. Then for the engine, two things are important. One is the combustion in the engine. Second is the engine cooling also. All these things also needs to be studied. Another major area where nowadays we are using CFDs, power generation, various types of power generation, starting from say windmills. Windmills, you already know what are windmills. So how to improve the efficiency of windmills. Then combustion within a furnace for a thermal power plant. Then flow around the cooling towers. Okay, flow within the burner of a turbine or a power plant. Okay. Water turbines. So a lot of areas are there where CFD is being used to improve the design so that we can increase the efficiency. Remember, if we can increase the efficiency by even 1%, that is a huge saving of the cost, running cost, because these things are run at so large scale. So it's that's why even incremental increases in efficiency is very important. So recently another area, so this is actually our results only. Recently another area that has become very important is storage of energy. So we are generating energy using different sources like solar energy or wind turbines or anything. But this source, many energy sources in nature are intermittent. Like so wind, there is a fluctuation in wind. Sometimes there is high velocity of wind, sometimes there is low velocity of wind. Similarly, solar energy, sometimes during daytime there is very high intensity of energy. Sometimes this is very cloudy or rainy. Then the energy is less. During night, there is no energy source. So you want to store the energy so that the output is uniform. Okay, output is steady. So there are different devices for storing the energy. These are known as energy storage devices, and a lot of CFD is used for studying and improving these devices. Okay. This is actually one such example where some material is used to store the energy by storing it as thermal energy, and this is from our research only. So similarly, other people are also doing research. Even in the industry, this is now picking up for various, particularly not only energy storage but also cooling of electronic components. Okay, so say if you open your laptop, you will see that it is very congested. If you open the back of your laptop, so you want to put a RAM, it is very congested. There are a couple of fans inside, most probably, and there are heat pipes, something called heat pipes, which takes the heat from the high temperature regions. High temperature regions are the processor and the graphics card, where at a very small location, lot of power is being put. So lot of calculations are going on, and all this heat is generated because of that. Okay, the power is dissipated at heat. So this, if we do not carry away this heat, this is going to damage the electronic components inside the laptop or inside your say if you have a desktop. Okay, so they need to be carried away using different mechanisms like forced convection, flow of air, or using fins or heat pipes. So all this again needs to be studied, can be studied using CFD, how the flow occurs within the fins. Okay, you can even, if you can see desktops also nowadays, higher end desktops, there will be a cooler over the processor. So the cooler has a heat pipe or multiple heat pipes which carries the heat from the processor to a region where there are large number of fins, and then the air which passes over the fins. So all this is can be designed using CFD. They can also be designed empirically, but CFD will give you much better or more efficient designs. And a lot of work goes on in this area, particularly for large scale systems. Large scale systems are, say you have developing a server room or a supercomputer with say hundreds of individual workstations or hundreds of individual servers. So then the cooling is very, very important. Okay, very, very important. Otherwise, you reduce the performance of the system. Nowadays, what happens is that the component does not get damaged, but the processor throttles down. The speed is reduced, so that the temperature generator is not very high. But if the speed is reduced, then you lose the functionality. Your system will run at a lower speed. So that's why cooling becomes so important, and CFD is used for that also. Another area very important for long time this is being like studied using CFD is material processing. Again, there are a lot of groups. I have worked in 2-3 industries, in General Motors, automobile industry, and also I worked in aerospace industry. I was in GE, and we had multiple teams working on material processing using CFD. There were very complex problems. Even our team was also working on turbine blades. So how to improve the solidification of turbine blades so that we get better properties and we can withstand higher temperatures. So similarly for IC engine, how the casting should be there so that less defects are present in the casting. So in automobile companies like Tata Motors, they are studying these effects. Similarly for welding, how to do a very good quality welding. Okay, so how to improve or reduce the defects, improve the properties. Casting, welding, then for a lot of new types of materials also, like additive manufacturing process, 3D printing of metals. There also we want to know what is the structure at the microscopic scale, so that we know how to improve the properties. If we can improve the structure at the microscopic scale, we can improve the properties. Improve the properties means improve the strength of the material. So by suitable design changes. So there also CFD plays a very important role. Ultimately, remember, all these problems have the same basic equations: heat transfer, flow, and say there may be some chemical reaction. But all of them are governed by the similar type of equations. So all of them are amenable to CFD solutions. Another area that has now picked up a lot of pace in recent years is biomedical applications. Even here also we do some work in biomedical applications. A lot of teams are working in biomedical applications. So for example, what is the flow pattern in the heart, flow pattern of blood? Okay. Then artery, blockages in artery or veins. How to, like if you put a stent, what will be the flow pattern? How will the blockage improve? Okay. Things like that can be studied much easily using CFD as compared to, obviously experiments are not possible. So you have to collect data from actual patients, which is tricky. So it is better to do using CFD. But CFD, there is a lot of challenge because you cannot replicate the exact process that is happening in a complex biological system. So things are improving over time. Similarly, say laser surgery of eyes. So how the fluid flow pattern and temperature evolution occurs in the eye during laser surgery. We are also working in some areas like laser surgery of cancer cells. Okay, so if you want to destroy cancer cells selectively using laser and cryogenics, how to do it? So that type of problems also can be tackled using CFD. So very good medical applications are there. Recently, you might have seen from our department, some good work has come out from Dr. Venugopal's lab that regarding this COVID. So the efficacy of the mask. So actually it was done using experiments, but same type of work can be done using CFD also. Like if somebody sneezes, which type of mask stops the droplets with how much efficacy and how far does these droplets get carried. So same type of work, a lot of people are working on using CFD, even for this COVID situation. Okay. So biomedical applications are a huge area where a lot of work goes on. There are hundreds of applications in biomedical, so I cannot count them all here. But once you read through, you will find very interesting areas. If you are interested in research in future, very interesting areas are there. And nowadays, even the companies are also working. There are a lot of biomedical companies which actually puts a lot of emphasis on R&D, and they use CFD tools for solving this type of problems. I will just digressing little bit. For example, one of the doctors, neurosurgeons from AIIMS here, AIIMS Bhubaneswar, approached us, means Dr. Rath and me, regarding a problem that he wanted to solve and whether it can be tackled using CFD, like the blood clot that is generated during a stroke in the brain, and that melting of the blood clot or the removal of the blood clot. So very complex problems. Although we could not properly address that problem because it was too complex, but I'm saying that a lot of interest is there from different areas for using CFD. Coming back to more conventional processes, chemical reactions, any chemical reactions, CFD will be very important. If it is an explosive process, also CFD is very important. Okay, marine applications, we have already seen aerospace and automobiles, so similarly marine applications, how to reduce the drag, how to improve the efficiency, how the propeller, whether it is working, how better is it working, how efficiently. So things like that, the design of the ship can be done based on CFD. Okay, because you want your, say, if it is a warship, so you want it to go as fast as possible to reduce the drag as much as possible. So again, it becomes very important. Even the engines also, there are large diesel engines in most of these large ships. Few ships will have nuclear power, but otherwise most of the ships have large diesel engines, and they are also how to design those engines and what is the conversion process, how it proceeds. Again, CFD is used. Very important area nowadays. Lot of recruitment also occurs. Is oil and gas. Okay, so petroleum industry. There are again various applications. For example, removing impurities from the petroleum products, then drilling in offshore rigs, so things like that. Then transfer of petroleum products from one area to another area using pipelines. Again, there were some interesting projects which came to us, to Dr. Dutt, and regarding like blockages in pipelines due to long time use of flow of petroleum products. So a lot of interesting work can be done in this area. A very more recent area, which has nowadays become quite important for CFD applications, is sports. Okay, so traditionally sports improvements in sports was done just empirically, like try to see whether this works or not. But nowadays things have become so competitive. Particularly nowadays, you must be watching. Most of you must be watching Olympics are going on. Okay, swimming event was there. Similarly, cycling races are there. So all these cases, even gaining a very small advantage can be the difference between getting a gold medal or not getting any medals. Right. So as a result, the techniques are being improved. Say swimming. If I give the example of swimming. Swimming techniques are being improved by studying them properly in a scientific method instead of just using ad hoc methods. And then also not only the techniques, like the costumes that are used. For example, if you have followed swimming for a long time, you will know that during 2008-9 period, at that time, there was a new type of swimming costume. Some full length, like full body costumes were being used for both male and female swimmers. And that gave to a big advantage because it reduced the drag dramatically and increased the buoyancy effect. And as a result, all the world records were getting broken at that time. Lot of world records got broken during that period, in 1 or 2 years period. So subsequently, they were banned. So this type of swimming costume was banned from competitive swimming because it was giving too much advantage. Okay. But my point here is to iterate that by properly studying, and so the company that developed it, it was a big achievement, right? Because they could develop something which gave so much advantage to a swimmer. So everybody was purchasing their equipment only because the design was so good that it could give a big advantage to the swimmer. Similarly, there are other areas, like if you see cycling, the cycling helmets that are used are also particularly for short distance cycling. Okay, which are done not in road, in track cycling. You will see very elongated type of helmets being used, so that it is extremely streamlined, so that the drag is extremely reduced, because even a small amount of extra drag can be the difference between winning or not winning. So many areas in sports are nowadays also using CFD studies. Okay, the companies are working on CFD studies. So these are some of the areas. There may be hundreds of other areas also. This is what I just felt are important areas at this moment, where a lot of CFD related works are going on. So you can see that it's a very important subject, and very important to gain good grip of this subject so that it is useful for our career. There are other hundreds of areas in academia where we are doing research, which may in the future may lead to a lot of industrial applications. Okay, in CFD. Okay, so everything is not rosy about CFD. So there are some limitations or challenges. Okay, So we have to be careful when it's not that like all problems can be solved using CFD. So there are multiple limitations. What are some of these limitations? There are limitations of the physical model itself, right? So we may not be able to capture or physics itself in a exhaustive manner. Means say it's a complex biological problem. Okay, there is a blood flowing over a tumor and lot of things are going on. Some enzymes are getting secreted. Then all the cells also are working at their like multiple biochemical processes are occurring inside. So it is very difficult to develop a physical model of that phenomena. Although that phenomena is actually occurring, we do not even know what are the correct equations for all the phenomena, right? Even creating all the equations itself is difficult. So that's why there is a limitation itself in the input itself, in the physical model itself. So if your model itself is not fully accurate, how can we expect that the result will be fully accurate, right? So we can solve it at up to a certain accuracy, but some problems are there which are still too difficult to handle using CFD. Only option left is to collect data or try to do some experimental study. So with time, more and more research will go on and some of these limitations will get removed. Then even if the physical model is correct, say I am able to capture exactly the physical model, some combustion is occurring in a say automobile engine. The combustion process is occurring. We are injecting diesel and it is burning with the available oxygen. So physics we can capture correctly. We know what are the equations. We know what is the rate of energy release, everything. But there may be errors that are generated because of numerical approximations, because we are solving the equations not in an exact form. We are converting them to simplified equations and trying to solve them, and it will lead to some errors, and we have to be careful about that. Then another point is that it may be difficult to exactly define even the initial and boundary conditions. You may not be exactly clear about what is the surface may be so complicated or the geometry may be so complicated that it is even difficult to understand what is the exact boundary condition. Blood flow is occurring in a vein. Okay, some of the blood also, so not the blood. So blood itself is a complicated fluid. It has multiple things, like it has RBC cells, platelets, okay, WBC cells, then plasma. So all of them are mixed together. So some of them can pass through the, may be able to diffuse slightly through the vein wall. Some of them it is not at all possible to interact with the walls of the vein. So it's a very complex interaction even with the walls. So there is something called perfusion. Okay, so then some heat generation also occurs. So it is even difficult to exactly capture what is the exact condition at the wall of the vein. So we have to give some approximate conditions. So initial and boundary conditions also have to be approximated in many cases, and that also is a limitation of CFD. But still, it is much more useful, say, as compared to analytical models, because you can capture complex physics, and you can capture physics which is not possible to capture using experiments because of various reasons we have discussed: length scale, time scales, hazardous nature, cost. Okay. So with this introduction, we are now in a position to start with the course. Any question? So notes will be uploaded in the portal, as I've already said. So you can download them from here in the file section. Already these two are there, and let me upload today's note. So you don't have to write anything. You just try to understand and ask questions whenever you do not understand something. And if you ask questions, it is beneficial for all the other students also, because things are getting recorded and we can It will help others also, or even during the exams, you can revisit these recordings to understand. So if there are no questions, we will take a 5 minutes break and then continue after 5 minutes. Okay. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Let's continue. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. Any questions? All right. So we will start with a very brief discussion on the basic conservation equations, because ultimately, see, all the problems that we are going to solve, we need to solve the equations that governs the phenomena that is going on. So heat transfer is occurring or flow is occurring. There are a certain set of equations which can be used to define this phenomena. Okay, and these equations come from some basic fundamental principles of conservation, which are valid in physics. For example, if I consider a system with a certain amount of mass of air in it and certain more amount of mass of air comes into it, the total mass always is going to be equal to the mass of air that was present plus the mass of air that comes inside. So the mass cannot change. Means mass can obviously change, but the total amount of mass is conserved. We are here ignoring for engineering applications, we are ignoring that small amount of mass can get converted to energy. So we are assuming that mass is a separate entity and energy is a separate entity. Only this becomes relevant, that mass energy equivalence becomes relevant for nuclear reactions and that type of problem, but that is beyond the scope of, or that is not relevant for CFD. So for our case, mass remains conserved. Similarly, the Newton's law also tells us that momentum remains conserved. So if a body is moving with a certain momentum, so unless it is acted upon by any other force, its momentum will remain will not change. And if there is a force acting on it, the momentum also will change accordingly, and it can be calculated. Okay. So from that, actually, also a governing equation, differential equation, can be derived for the momentum conservation. And similarly, energy remains conserved in any say. If I consider an object or like IC engine, I was saying engine where combustion is occurring, so the total chemical energy plus total thermal energy in the system will always remain conserved. Either it may be in chemical form or thermal form or some other form, but the total amount of energy remains conserved. So that also, so the chemical in the combustion process, what is happening? Chemical energy is getting converted to thermal energy. If you are burning a candle, the chemical energy of the candle is getting converted to some most of it gets converted to thermal energy, and some of it will also go out as electromagnetic energy. Electromagnetic means basically here I'm talking about the light. So anyway, so energy is also conserved. So these three equations and along with some additional equations are very important for solving any CFD problems. Okay. So what are the corresponding equations? When I'm saying about mass conservation in differential form, it leads to something which is known as continuity equation. Almost all of you are familiar with continuity equation. So basically, it tells that the mass of a in a domain remains conserved or is equal to the total amount of mass which was there plus the amount of mass which comes inside minus the amount of mass which goes outside. So it is written as in this form, in differential form, as del rho del T, where rho is the density of a substance, plus del dot rho u equal to 0, where u is the vector velocity. Vector velocity means in a 3D problem it has 3 components, in a 2D problem it has 2 components. So it can be written as u in the x direction, v in the y direction, and z in the w in the z direction. And this del is known as nabla or del, which is which is an operator like this. In full form, it is given as del x of in the I direction plus del y in the j direction. J is the y direction, unit vector in the y direction. Del z in the z direction, where k is the unit vector. The first term is the accumulation of energy or loss of energy in the system, del rho del T. How in the, so like whether the mass is increasing in the system or decreasing. And the second term physically means how much energy is net energy is coming in or going out. Okay, difference in the not energy, sorry, difference in the mass which is coming in and going out. So first is the amount of accumulation of mass in the system. Second is the difference in the mass which is coming in and going out. And together both these terms will lead us to the conservation of mass. Okay. So this is very important. Now we may be required to solve it in this native form, or we may be able to reduce it to a simpler form. But this is a fundamental equation in CFD. Okay. So if you want to write this in 3D in full form, if you get confused, this is the form del rho del t plus this del x I. So this multiplied, so dot product of this with this term will give us, we'll only consider the ith direction magnitude of velocity, which is u. So it will come out as del x rho u. Similarly, the y direction will come as del y rho v. And the third direction is del z rho w. So this is the scalar form of the continuity equation. Okay. U, v, and w are velocity components along the x, y, and z direction. So if I have a volume like this, 3D, this is the x direction, y direction, z direction. And so u is the velocity along the x direction, v is the velocity along y direction. U direction arrow should be in the opposite direction. Okay. So it is here showing in the minus x direction, but as per the equation, it is supposed to be in the x direction. So in this, and w is along the z direction. So for this domain, we can say that equation is valid. Similarly, for any other domain, we can say that this equation is valid. Mass is conserved. Okay. So now if the, so you can see that there is a term which has the time in it, and there are terms which has the space in it. Okay. So if there is no variation with time, we call the problem as steady state problem, as you know. So for steady state problem, because there is no change with time, del rho del t is 0, because there is no change with time. So we can write this as only the second term, del dot rho u equal to 0. Okay. So this part will be there. If the density is also constant, we can even remove the density. Ultimately, density you can take out if it is constant. If it is constant means if it is not varying with space. So we can write this as del dot u equal to 0, which is del u del x plus del v del y plus del w del z equal to 0. So this is a simplified form of the equation for problems where there is no change with time and no change in density. This is for 3D. If you consider 2D, it will be del u del x plus del v del y equal to 0. And for a 1D problem, it is only du dx equal to 0. Any questions? Very familiar things. Madhumita, you are from maths background. You are understanding?
Yes, sir.
Who else was there? Priyal, you are also from maths, right?
Sir.
You are
Yes,
able
sir.
to understand? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. For mechanical engineers, these are very common things. They already know. So for them, it's just repetition. Okay. Because they have studied in, say, I think in second year of BTech. So anyway, then the momentum conservation equation. Momentum conservation equation in differential form can be written like this: del t of rho u, where u is the vector u, means all three components are there, plus del dot rho u plus del dot mu del u. I will explain the terms. Minus gradient of p, means del p, plus b. Okay. So first term is the unsteady term, change with time, change of momentum with time. Okay. In all three directions, right? U, v, and w. Similarly, this is known as the inertial term. Okay. This third term is known as viscous term. Mu is the viscosity. So it takes into account the frictional forces that are present in the fluid. Okay. Then gradient of P is the effect of pressure, gradient of pressure, the change in pressure with distance. and B is it consists of all the other terms. Okay, all the other body forces. Body forces are like gravity. Okay, effect of gravity. So it's the force which acts over the entire body. So we can write that rho G here. Okay. Similarly, can you give some other examples of other body forces? Apart from gravity, what are other body forces? What can be other body forces? Anyone from buoyancy? Good. Anything else? New students? Nothing comes up to your mind? Electromagnetic forces will act on the entire body. Centrifugal force will act on the entire body, right? What are some examples of forces which are not body forces? Answers.
Shear force. Friction. And
Friction. Yes. Pressure itself does not act over the pressure at the surface. Good. So okay. So this is the momentum equation. So it is actually a set of three equations if you want to write in scalar form. Okay. So three separate equations can be written. One for the x direction, one for y direction, one for z direction. So I will just show you one example. Similarly, you can derive or write the other equation. So for the x direction, the same equation. It's just expressing in a different form. We are not changing anything. X direction equation can be written as del t of rho u plus del x of rho u plus del y of rho vu. Okay, u is the x direction velocity component, v is the y direction velocity component, plus del z of rho w. W is the z direction component. These three terms are together for this. So this will actually result in 9 terms. 3 terms are in the x direction equation, 3 in the y direction equation, 3 in the z direction equation. Similarly, this will also result in 9 terms. 3 are in the x direction equation, 3 in the y, and 3 in the z direction equation. For the x direction equation, these viscous terms are del x of mu del u del x plus del y of mu del u del y plus del z of mu del u del z. Pressure term is actually one term for each direction. So del p del x for the x direction. And body forces also are directional. So gravity only exists, for example, in the. So if I take the z direction as the vertical direction, gravity will be only in the vertical direction. So any other body forces which acts in the x direction has to be taken here. Similar equations also can be written for y and z directions. Okay. So this is a general equation. Now, depending on the problem, we can simplify it further. For example, if it's a 2D yes, question. If it's a 2D problem, we can ignore all the z components and w components. Okay. So it will become much simpler. If it is a steady state, no variation with time is occurring, we can also neglect this first term. Okay. If there are no body forces, we can neglect this term. Okay. If viscosity is negligible, we can even remove this. So there are a lot of possibilities. Okay. So of approximation. But this is the general form. This is not the most general form of the conservation equation. But for our case, in this course, we will take this as to be the general form. And so this is known as also Navier-Stokes equation. In general, the more general form of the equation, instead of so this viscous effect, there will be shear forces and other type of forces here. So we cannot write directly in terms of viscosity. For example, non-Newtonian fluids. Okay, so that I teach in another course where I teach about non-Newtonian fluids. But for simple Newtonian fluids, we can write in this form. Okay. But I'm just trying to point out that there are even more general forms of equations, conservation equation. So from a very general conservation equation, after certain derivation and simplification, this form of the equation comes. It is not the more general form of the equation. But for our purpose, this is sufficient. So again, as I was saying, if you want to simplify in 2D, x is the horizontal and y is the vertical direction. If we take, then it will look, if without any body forces other than gravity, okay, we can write the two equations. For x direction, it will become del t of rho u, del x of rho u plus del y of rho v equal to del x of mu del u del x plus del y of mu del u del y minus del p del x. Same equation, but all the z terms have got removed. Z direction terms and w velocities. Similarly, the y direction equation will be analogous, but we will have minus rho g. Okay, it's cut off here. So it is minus del p del y minus rho g. Okay, minus del p del y minus rho g. So minus rho g is the gravity term in the negative y direction. That's why the minus comes. So this is about momentum equation. Okay, so this is another fundamental equation which we need to solve if we want to find out the velocity profile. Velocity means flow that is occurring at any point. Without solving this, we cannot find the flow correct. Similarly, the third conservation equation is the energy conservation equation. Okay. So as you know already, energy is conserved. First law of thermodynamics tells that energy is conserved, right? So from that, in differential form, this equation can be obtained by balancing the energy. How much energy is there, how much it is increasing, how much is coming in, and how much is going out, how much is being generated. If we consider all this, we will get energy conservation. So in a general form, this can be written as del T of rho h, where h is enthalpy. What is enthalpy? Enthalpy is a term which takes into account different types of energy content. Okay, for example, sensible energy, sensible thermal energy is the energy which is dependent on temperature of an object. So Cp into T, Cp into temperature. Similarly, there is latent energy which is associated with the phase change process. So liquid will, at the same temperature, liquid has higher energy as compared to solid. So that also can be is incorporated in the enthalpy. Similarly, there can be chemical energy. So for example, carbon dioxide will have a different energy as compared to say carbon or oxygen at the same temperature and same state. So if you take oxygen and carbon dioxide both at the same temperature and same gaseous condition, so for both the sensible and latent energy are same, but still their total energy is not same because of chemical energy. So all these are different forms of energy and totally they are put together as enthalpy. Okay, so if we ignore chemical energy, as is possible for most cases, we will only have sensible and latent energy. So del T of rho h is the change of energy with time plus del dot rho uh. Already we know what is rho and u. So h, this term gives us how much energy is coming in and going out from the domain because of flow. How much the flow is coming into the domain, it is bringing certain energy with it. So that is taken care of by this term. Is equal to del dot k del t. This term takes into account how much energy is coming into the domain because of diffusion or conduction, heat conduction. Okay. So even if there is no flow, we know that diffusion will occur and some energy will come in or go out depending on the temperature gradient. So that is taken care of by this term. And if there is any source term, like some, I'm solving the heat transfer in a room and there is a heater which is switched on in the room. So some heat will be generated in that room, right? Electricity is getting converted to heat. So that has to be put as a source term. Similarly, I am solving the flow around a candle and the candle is being lighted. So it is generating certain amount of heat. So again, that has to be taken into account. Okay, so those type of terms comes in as source terms. Negative source term also can be there. The heat is being removed away. So if we only consider the sensible form of heat, ignoring all other things. So if our problem is say only I want to study the flow in air. So there is no change of phase from the gas to the liquid or solid. Or if I only want to study a liquid or only a solid, like what is the heat transfer in a metallic plate. Okay. So then I don't need to bother about latent energy or chemical energy, any other energy. So in that case, the energy can be simply written as Cp into T. Okay. So the equation will become, you just replace it Cp into T, and it will become a very familiar temperature equation. Del T of rho Cpt plus del dot rho U Cpt. If there is no flow, even this term also vanishes, and this equation becomes even simpler. Okay. If there is flow, if there is some phase change, melting or solidification or boiling is occurring, or condensation, then we have to take into account the latent energy also. Okay. So we have one additional term where L is the latent energy of phase change. So we know that the liquid, so when ice is melting, certain amount of energy is required for the ice to melt, even at the same temperature. So that L is the latent energy of melting. Similarly, for boiling, we know the latent energy of boiling. And FL is a term which is equal to the fraction of liquid that is present in that location. So if it is fully 100% liquid is present, then FL will become 1, and we will have full L amount of latent energy. If the liquid is 0 and solid is 100%, then there is no latent energy, so it becomes 0. Similarly, for gas also it can be defined. For vapor, I mean. Cpt is the sensible energy, FLL is the latent heat, FL is the liquid mass fraction, and L is the latent heat of melting. Similarly, H can be defined for any other phase change problem like condensation, boiling. Okay. Directly from solid to vaporization, solid to vapor also, solid to vapor change also can occur. Sublimation, right? Do any one of you know what is the name of the process where vapor directly condenses to solid? No idea.
Sublimation.
Sublimation.
Sublimation, I think.
I am also not sure. There is a term called congelation that is used in some context, but there are other terms also. Maybe you can look up. Okay, just out of curiosity, it's not relevant for CFD, but interesting phenomena. So anyway, let us come back to this 2D steady state problem. If we want to write the equation in full form in 2D steady state or 2D steady state case, we can write it as, so because it's steady state, that variation with time is not there. So it is del x of rho U Cpt plus del y of rho V Cpt is equal to del x of k delta T del x plus del y of k delta T del y plus source term. Okay, it's the same equation, just written in a non-scalar form, in a scalar form, so that is easier to understand. Conduction only problem, then these flow terms will not be there, and you will be left with del x of k del T del x plus del y of k del T del y plus sh equal to 0. If there is no source term, you can even remove the source term, and for 1D conduction, it will become d dx of k dt dx equal to 0. Very familiar equation. D dx of k dt dx equal to 0. And in those type of simple problems, even we can solve them directly by integrating. So which is known as analytical solution. But once the equation becomes too complex, like these cases, analytical solution becomes difficult. If it is a 3D problem, it will be almost impossible. For 1D, it is still possible. Similarly, another example of conservation equation, which is also relevant in many applications, is chemical species equation, chemical species conservation. What is chemical species? Anytime when you have two types of material, okay. So for example, air and nitrogen is, oxygen and nitrogen is present in the air. We are assuming that it is fully well mixed. So that's why we can consider air to be a single entity. But now say combustion is occurring somewhere, and the combustion products, like I am burning a candle. As a result, what will be the combustion products? Carbon dioxide and water vapor. So because it's a hydrocarbon, wax is kind of hydrocarbon. If the combustion is proper, it will result in carbon dioxide and water vapor. If it is not proper, then some carbon monoxide may also get produced. So in general, there will be carbon dioxide and water vapor. So now it was air only, but now additionally this air and water vapor are there. So at any location in the room, because this this water vapor and carbon dioxide will move around, diffuse and flow around in the room, the percentage of air, percentage of water vapor, air means I am telling about the original air, oxygen and nitrogen only. Percentage of that, percentage of water vapor and percentage of carbon dioxide will vary in the room. So how can I find out this variation? So that percentage of water vapor is given by the conservation equation for the water vapor. Similarly, for carbon dioxide, it will be given by the conservation equation for carbon dioxide. Okay, so these equations are known as species conservation equation. Another example is, say I have dropped a drop of ink in water. Okay, so I had a say glass bowl filled with water, and I have dropped a drop of ink, and gradually we'll see that the ink diffuses from that point, and it will slowly mix with the entire glass of or bowl of water. So how will we track how much this mixing will occur with time? We can solve it using CFD problem. Again, it's also a diffusion problem. So there also we can treat this ink as a separate species and water as the other species. So if we have two species, we need to solve for only one species equation, because ultimately at any point, the total amount of like all the summation of all the material has to be equal to 100%. If I know that ink is equal to 20% at that point, it means that there the water is 80%. In another point, if I find that ink is 40%, it means that water is 60%. So I have to solve the species equation for ink or the for water like this. So any chemical reaction is occurring or any mixing is occurring, wherever we have multi-component system, we have to solve the chemical species equation. Even in our research also we do it for many cases, like casting process or alloy solidification, where there are two components, like steel, which is a mixture of iron and carbon. So when iron carbon solidifies, there is a change in the variation in the concentration of carbon. So as a result, somewhere more carbon is present, somewhere less carbon is present. And depending on this, the property of the steel will vary. So it is very important to know what is this variation. If we can predict that using CFD, it's very advantageous. So for that also we need to solve for the species equation for carbon. So what is the form of this equation? This is exactly same as the similar to the energy equation. Okay. Just a second. This was our energy equation on the right hand side, right? This is our energy equation, and if you see the species equation, it looks almost similar. So del T of rho c, instead of enthalpy, we have the we have a entity which is known as concentration. Concentration is the fraction of the species that is present at any location. So for the ink problem, it is the fraction of ink that is present at any point. For that combustion problem, it is the fraction of water vapor that is present at any point. Okay. So del T of rho c, where c is the concentration, plus del dot rho uc. The second term gives us the change in concentration due to flow, is equal to del dot gamma del c. This is the change in concentration due to diffusion. This is analogous to thermal diffusion, means like conduction. This diffusion occurs even if there is no flow. So if the water is totally static and you drop an ink drop, still you will see that with time the ink drop spreads around, but the water is not flowing at all. So why is it spreading? Because of diffusion process. So that is taken into care by this term. And if there is any source term, so constantly I'm dropping a drop of ink, more and more ink is coming into the domain. So how will I take it into the incorporate that into the problem by using a source term. Okay, so it is analogous to this to your energy equation. All the terms are similar. Okay. C is the concentration, gamma is known as the diffusivity of the species, and S is the source term. Okay. Why does this diffusion occur? Like say I'm asking the new student. Okay, I have dropped a ink drop of ink in water, and there is no flow. Still the ink is spreading. Why is it happening?
Because of difference in concentration.
That is from mathematical point of view, but fundamentally, physically, what is happening? Why this? What is up? Like if there is difference in concentration, why should the ink move from one side to the other side? What is the mechanism? Right. For example, diffusion is very less in solids. If I have a solid and it's like a cast product, you know what is a casting, right? So at one location, say say it's a aluminium copper cast product. Okay, one location the copper concentration is 10%, another location copper concentration is 5%. So in solid form, you know that it is going to remain as 10% in that location and 5% because the diffusion is very less in the solid. So whatever is the during casting process, whatever has been the concentration, it's not going to change much. So then what is happening in liquid or gas? Even in solid, diffusion is there, but it is very less. So it mostly occurs because of the vibration of the molecules, right? There is, you know what is Brownian motion. So because of vibration of the molecules and movement of the molecules, means for the gases if they are moving around. So because of their impact, gradually there is a spread of any species. Okay, so wherever the more species is there, it will just move around in other locations. It will try to average out. That's why this diffusion occurs. So diffusion is mainly it is occurring because of movement at the atomic level. So how can it be improved? It can be. So again, I'm just going out of CFD. It's just because it is interesting. You might have read about heat treatment processes in materials, right? So why is this heat treatment done? We know that it is after casting, the temperature, like the material is taken to a high temperature and kept at that temperature. What happens at that temperature? Like we know heat treatment is done and properties improve, but what is the actual mechanism? What happens is that if you take it to a high temperature, the diffusivity increases because the atoms vibrate more about their axis. So the vibration of atoms is dependent on the temperature, basically. The temperature is nothing but kinetic energy of the atoms, right? So because they are vibrating more at high temperature, more chances are there of them going to other locations. And this is the diffusion. So diffusion will increase at high temperature. And because diffusion will increase at high temperature, properties means the concentration will become more uniform at high temperature. So this will lead to better properties. So that's why heat treatment is done in a materials processing, in material processing. A lot of things are related. You have to develop that intuition to relate these things. Let us come back to our problem. So ultimately, we have seen a few examples of different conservation equations, and our study will be limited to energy equation and flow equations. Okay, and in many cases, if you are going to do some research, you may have to solve chemical species equations also. In many cases, there can be other equations like turbulent kinetic energy equation. A lot of other types of equations can be there. We'll not go into those details. Okay. Fundamental idea remains same, that there is a conservation equation which has certain type of terms. What are these type of terms? After looking at all these equations, we can see that there is a term which takes into account the variation with time. This is known as unsteady term or transient term. Okay, so for a general variable phi, okay, instead of C or H, if I develop an equation for a general variable phi can be anything. It can be enthalpy or concentration. I can write this transient term as del del T of rho phi. Okay. Then the convective or advective term, which is the transport due to flow, can be written as del dot rho u phi. Okay, where phi is the general variable. Okay, so phi can be enthalpy, phi can be concentration, phi can be even it can be momentum also. Okay, and similarly, there is a diffusion term del dot gamma del phi. Okay, where gamma is the diffusivity. Okay, for that variable phi, and then if there are any source of that phi, so that is the source term. So this is known as a general conservation equation. Okay, with these 4 terms, and all these other equations are almost related to the general conservation. So this is all same as general conservation equation. You just have to appropriately define what is phi. So in this case, phi is C, and what is gamma. Gamma is gamma. This gamma. Okay. Similarly, for this equation, we have to find out what is phi and what is. So in this case, it can be written in terms of temperature. So phi will become temperature, and gamma will become diffusivity. Okay. And similarly, for momentum equation also is similar in nature. Although it looks complicated, it also has same type of terms. Okay, it's only the vector u in place of phi. We have the vector u, and diffusivity, instead of diffusivity you have viscosity. Some additional terms are there because of pressure gradient. Okay. So this is the general and general conservation equation. Why I am writing it in this form? Because if I can develop any method for solving this equation, okay, solving like treating all the terms in this equation, if I know how to treat this term, because this is a derivative, right? How to make it into algebraic form? How can we redefine this derivative into algebraic form? Similarly, this one. If I know how to treat these terms and solve this equation, I can apply the same approach for all the equations, for chemical species, for momentum, for energy. So it does not matter what is the equation. Ultimately, we have to just find out some way of solving this general equation. So now our problem has reduced to a much simpler form. We have to develop a method which needs to solve this type of equation. Okay, each term. So it is not so easy as it sounds. For each term, we need a lot of treatment to solve them. A lot of methods are there. But ultimately, if we know how to solve this equation, we can find out solution for each of these equations by using the same method. Okay, that's why this general conservation equation is very important, because we only need to develop our numerical model or CFD program for solving this equation, and then we can supply that program with appropriate value of phi and gamma and source term to solve the equation. Okay, so I can say what is phi, what is gamma, what is source term, and it will solve and give the appropriate solution, along with boundary condition and initial condition has to be given. Any questions on this? So I hope you understand. Please go through this. Older students already know these things in very much details. So for them it is nothing new. So some comments on the conservation equations. So this equation, I should not have closed that. Okay, anyway, are coupled equation. Okay, coupled system of nonlinear partial differential equation. Differential equation, you know, like there are derivatives. Partial differential equation means partial derivatives are present. Del x, del y, this type of terms are present. Okay, means the parameter is dependent on more than one parameter. So say temperature. Temperature is dependent on x direction, y direction, and time. So because it is dependent on 3 independent parameters, each variation needs to be taken into account by its partial derivative. So del t, del x, del t, del y, like this. So that's why partial differential equation. Non-linear means that, say you are trying to, so not all the equations are non-linear, but if the variable that we are trying to solve for, say u, that itself occurs again in the coefficient of solving, okay, then you cannot directly solve it. The problem becomes much more complicated, because you cannot directly solve that problem. Okay? So some sort of iterative technique, we will see later. Iterative technique means you have to just keep on repeating this process again and again to go through the correct solution. So that type of technique is needed. So this is true for momentum equations. Okay, where you might have seen that the coefficient u is itself present for variable phi. Okay, so even the thermal or other equations can be nonlinear if say diffusivity is a function of phi. For example, conductivity can be a function of temperature. Then I will not be able to specify what is the exact conductivity because temperature is unknown. How will I know what is the conductivity? So it has become a difficult problem. Okay. So similarly, density, if it is a function of temperature. So again, I cannot find the temperature by solving the equation because I don't know the density itself because it's a function of temperature and I don't know the temperature. So how will I know the density? So as I cannot specify the density also, then it becomes a very challenging problem to solve. So non-linear equation. Okay. So it's very difficult to solve analytically. Okay. Almost impossible. This general equation is not possible to solve analytically. Some simplified forms are possible to solve. For example, 1D equation, 1D heat transfer equation, 2D heat transfer equation, unsteady equation also possible to solve. People are trying to get more and more solutions analytically. It's very difficult. It's a job of the mathematicians. So even some problems, it is even not clear whether solution exists or not. For example, full Navier-Stokes equation, the flow equation that I have shown. This is one of the millennium problems. I guess some of you know what are millennium problems. Like there are a set of problems which are very challenging and they are standing there for many years as unsolved problems. So one of the problems is to show that, like in simple form, I can say that is to show that solution of the Navier-Stokes equation exists, and basically that itself is not known whether Navier-Stokes equation can be solved analytically or not. Then only it will come into picture whether what will be the exact solution. Okay. So when I am saying that solving, I mean that general closed form solution cannot be found. Okay, obviously it can be solved, the equation numerically, but it cannot be solved by integrating them and getting closed form solution. Like say if the equation is only dt dx equal to 0, I can solve it by integrating. So t will become equal to ax plus b, where a and b are constant. So this is a closed form solution. T is equal to x plus b. But what will be the equation? What will be the phi for this equation? You cannot just integrate it because it's so complicated. So that's why general closed form solution does not exist. Okay, or we don't know whether it exists or not. May or may not exist. But at least nobody has been able to find till now. So for the main idea is to impress upon you that we need numerical methods to find the solution for most of the cases. That's why we are studying this, or you are learning this course. Okay. So that for most of the cases, because analytically it is not possible to find the solution, we have to solve numerically. I will stop here today, and we will continue in the next class is on next Monday, right? So we'll continue in next Monday this discussion. Please, if you are, I'm going very slowly at this point, but we will have to pick up the pace because a lot of things are there in the syllabus. So because there are students from different backgrounds, initial part I was just going slowly. Gradually we'll pick up the pace. I will stop the recording.